On a prior video, I showed the unboxing of ISE Engineering's Motorman, and I've since installed it, at least almost fully. I made a frame out of two sections of plywood that I glued together, clamped, so that I could have a flush mount. It would be too big to flush mount here on the fascia. So I removed the holder for the ISE Engineering Proto Throttle was here, and I'm just going to move that over here just to get it out of the way. And then the Motorman control. So this is a automatic train controller or shuttler. So it allows you to run a train. You can program all your DCC engines. It works with DC as well. You program all your engines into it and then pick which one you want to run. And you can either set the whole track to be controlled by the Motorman, or you can isolate a track. In my case, I'm just going to set the whole layout so that if I'm out here working, there's the new extension with lighting. I'll do that update in a separate video. But what this Motorman does is it'll take whichever engine you select and it'll run it from one end of the layout along the track that you choose. You set your turnouts, and it'll get to the other end of the layout and it'll hit a sensor. It'll stop, reverse, go back, get to the other end of the layout and do the same. It'll stop, brake, go in the opposite direction, and then keep going. So it'll shuttle back and forth. So it's good for things like if you got a Sperry rail car inspection train, if you got a little RDC passenger car that goes back and forth. If you got a larger layout, you can have a passenger train. And this, as an example, I've got this, which is P&W's maintenance away train. So it's going to go basically back from here as it's cruising along through the CSX yard, working with them on track inspections and tie replacements. Then it goes onto its own territory. It'll run all the way down to the end there, and then it'll reverse itself and go back. And you can set the speed slow, so obviously it's not, so it's prototypical and it doesn't just race back and forth. So it's kind of a cool deal. So let me talk about how it works. You can get this faceplate, which is an extra. It's like $25 extra. This is the actual Motorman unit. And so I got the faceplate, which basically has a double pull, double throw switch built into it. So you can go from normal, in my case, which is DCC. So that just sets it to the power cab and everything that runs off that, the Proto Throttle, the smaller cabs. You can turn it off so nothing goes to the track, and then you flip it over to Motorman, and then the Motorman takes over, and you'll hit run, and it'll start the sequence. So let's take a look back here. There's a lot of wires, obviously. What it uses, real simply, and these are not fully installed. These are ISE Engineering's under the track infrared sensors. So I have it over here. I will put it up through the bottom of the track, and I'll show that in a separate video because I've got a technique where you have to drill. I think it's like a 3/8. You don't want to drill up and hit the ties and rip the track all up. So what I do is I cut free two ties. I scrape away the ballast, and I just slide those ties out, and then I drill the hole. I get that sensor situated, and I slide the ties back in, just CA them down, and then ballast around it. You can't even tell, because if you try to do that without removing the ties, it's a bit sketchy. So there'll be a sensor on that end. The other sensor I have, because I haven't extended the wires yet, it's just hanging down here. This was really just to test everything, but it's actually gonna, I'll extend the wires and it's gonna go all the way down, and it'll be probably on this track here. I've got the 1, 2, 3, 4 tracks. I'm not sure which one, but it'll be at the end of that track. So once the sensors are installed, the whole thing will run. But I can give you a demo, and I'll just activate those sensors by hand. But let's talk about how it's installed. Back here, you can see it looks, it's thick wood, but I used what I had. I wanted it to be a pretty robust bracket. And this is the back side. So this is the actual Motorman. And this is the switch that you turn the rotary switch to go from DCC to Motorman. That's an option that comes with the faceplate. And you basically take your DCC input, which is here coming out of the power cab, the red and white. You feed that into the into that switch, and then this is out for tracks. So this goes to your bus. And then the sensors are pretty straightforward. It's a little tricky getting them in when you have the way I've buried this thing in the plywood. I have to work a little to get them in there, but the positive and negative, red and black, are connected to the same things, and then the white is left and right sensors for basically for the reversing sensors on each end. One says left and the other says right. So that's it. Fairly straightforward, honestly, to hook it up. I just got to clean up all these wires and install those things. So let's go back and look at what the user interface looks like. It's pretty simple, really. I mean, you let me just show you a couple things. You just hit configure, and if you want to configure a locomotive, you select. The first one is DC. It defaults to 00 DC. This is a DCC layout, so I scroll down, I select that, and this is the one engine that I have programmed in. It's 2203. You can set the maximum speed, which I have, it's 20, but let me see if I can do this. I want to make it faster so that when I demo it, it's not just crawling too slow. Let's make it 50. And the ramp is how fast you want it to accelerate and then how fast you want it to decelerate. So 5 seconds. So you can, when it hits a sensor, determine how slowly how long it takes to stop, and then how long it takes to start back up in the other direction. Obviously you don't want to just take off. I'll probably set it for higher than 5 seconds, but for now. Then this is kind of cool. This is a default function. So for me, 08 is starting the engine with the sound. And then you could have two functions when it starts to go forward. So turning on the front headlights and ditch lights, and then when it goes backwards, turning on the rear headlights and ditch lights. This engine doesn't have ditch lights, but my other engines do. And then what happens on acceleration. So when it accelerates, I have the bell function, and when it brakes, 09 is the brake. So you'll actually have it'll activate the brake. You'll hear the tsh, and you save it. Back. Let's get to the main. Okay, I'm already there. It gives you a voltage draw and an amp draw. And it'll tell you which of these sensors are activated, left or right. So left for me is literally the left side of the layout, and right is the right side. Get it off normal, put it on Motorman. And it's ready. All right, so it's that engine. To activate it, you hit the run button. So you hear the brakes released and the bell started. Make sure your turnouts are aligned, which they are. So this is a lot faster than I actually had this go. So I just have it creep back and forth like it's doing maintenance away work. And then as I'm out here working on the layout, I could just have that running. I also have an RDC that I want to get a decoder in as like an excursion train and a Sperry rail car. So now if it hits, it would come to this end once the sensor's installed, and I'll activate the sensor. I'll show you the red light goes on when it activates. So now the brakes go on. It'll turn off the front headlights. And it turns on the reverse lights and the bell starts. And you can have that function do whatever you want. You can have the horn blast. So once it's set up, it would creep along and it would get to the very end of the CSX territory. And in that case, it'll hit this sensor once it's installed. Brakes, it'll flip on the front lights, ring the bell. So, and I'll change that ramp up so that it takes longer to accelerate and longer to stop. But that's the idea. There's the other thing you can do that I haven't done. Just one thing, you can actually have a third sensor, or actually a third set of sensors for an intermediate stop. So let's say you're running a passenger train, like if I have my RDC, or even this thing, it may stop in that P&W maintenance yard area. So it'll come to the, you put a pair of sensors in the middle, it'll hit the first one, it'll stop, and then it'll stop for how long you want it to stop, it'll start up again. And the reason you have two sensors is so when it's coming from the other direction, it hits that sensor on the other side and it stops. So you could do a midpoint with two additional sensors. So now let's actually activate this with my hand as if it's actually installed. So we're getting to the end here. That's about where I'm going to have it turn around. I haven't turned on the caboose lights. In this case, I would have to, through DCC, turn on the caboose decoder so the lights are on, and then flip over to the Motorman, which I didn't do, but you can do that. There's also a way to, you can have those intermediate sensors activate a turnout. So I've been told, if you wanted to do like a 3-point run, you could have it hit the first sensor there, and then when it hits the first of the two intermediate sensors, it could throw a switch so that it takes a different route, and then when it comes back from that route, it flips the turnout again, so then the second time it'll go down a different track. So basically it's like a 3-point route that you can set. So there's quite a bit you can do with it, and you can program every one of your engines into it. So that, let me stop it so it doesn't run off the end there, because I haven't installed the sensors. So to stop it, you just boom. And there's a manual. You can do things while it's running. You can increase the speed and do things so you don't have to go into the whole program thing. But if you do want to change speed as actually part of the configuration, you just hit that configuration button. So the user interface is very intuitive, actually. They give you a nice instruction manual, which I actually printed this version off so that I could take notes on it, but it walks you through pretty clearly what you need to do and how to use the user interface. So that's it. It's the Iowa Scaled Engineering Motorman. Now if I turn it off, let the capacitors drain, and then if I flip over here, we're back to normal DCC operation. So I can then control said engine with this. Anyway, I want to thank Nathan and Michael at Iowa Scaled Engineering, because those guys are phenomenal. If you have any problems, email them. They get right back. They back their products 100%. Really good technology. I mean, if you've played with or you have the proto throttle, you know the kind of stuff that these guys make. So this thing is probably my favorite feature of the entire layout, entire hobby, actually. So yeah, Iowa Scaled Engineering Motorman. Get yours today. Any questions or comments, please leave them. Make sure you vote. Cheers.